Pull up a chair, make yourself comfy, and let's talk guitars. Hi, this is Cams, and welcome to another episode of Acoustic Guitar I.O. I sat down with luthier Malcolm Griffiths of Sheaf Guitars in Sheffield during the annual UK gathering of the RMMGA News Group in the Cotswolds. We had a good chat for about half an hour talking about guitar building, and I'd like to share that episode with you now. So without any further ado, sit back, make yourself comfy, and here's Malcolm Griffiths. Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Acoustic Guitar I.O. And today I'm sitting here with luthier, scuba diver, who knows what else he does, we'll find that out, Malcolm Griffiths. Welcome to the podcast, Malcolm. How are you?
I'm good, Tar. It's good to be here.
It's great to see you again. We've met a few times at the RMMGA gatherings.
Yeah, that's right.
Back in Buxton was probably the first time we met.
Yeah.
And here we are now in Spring Hill, down in the Cotswolds. A fantastic location.
Yeah, beautiful venue, inspiring to make you want to play and sit and listen or whatever, so it's good.
Well, it's been great so far. This is day 2 of the RMMGA gathering. We had a really great concert last night from Will McNichol. We're looking forward to some more fantastic music today. So, Malcolm, you build guitars. Tell me a little bit about how you got started in that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've always made things with my hands, be it bits of furniture or fixed things. And all of my hobbies have always encompassed something that has a creative element and a technical element. So I did a lot of photography, for example, including underwater photography, where I'd take multiple images and project them through 2 projectors with a fade system, and then you'd put it to music and dialogue and things like that. So that was like back 30-40 years ago when everything was emulsion and slides and old-fashioned, whereas I'd still do the same thing today when I go scuba diving. I take video now and some stills, and I'm able to edit those down onto a program, and usually I put some of my own music I've written as the backing music, so it's that sort of full circle with that. But to get back to your question, as I said, I've always made things, and about 20 plus years ago, maybe 25 years ago, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to make a guitar? So there was a course running in the Peak District in Derbyshire that lasted for 5 days, where you made a guitar. So I enrolled on that, and at the end of that week I went, oh dear, I'm hooked, this is great.
What was your first guitar that you built?
It was a large dreadnoughty type guitar, which had a few faults as you'd expect from a first instrument. I played it for a few years quite successfully, but it's now retired. So that was a great experience. I did that, and then when I'd done that course, I went home and set up a miniature workshop in the garden shed, which was full of other stuff as well as woodworking stuff, as they usually are.
Lawnmowers and shears and...
Yeah. And then I made 2 mandolins.
Wow.
Which are both still in existence. One of them has started to, unfortunately, collapse through old age, and because I didn't really have a full understanding of what I was doing with the timbers at the time. But while it was playing, it sounded really good.
Yeah, excellent.
In fact, I'm making a replacement for the chap who's got it at the moment.
Right.
So, but that sort of lasted 15 years, so it's not done too bad.
Yeah. And what kind of woods do you like to build with?
I use a variety of different timbers. I seem to have got quite into cherry and walnut recently, so maybe if you might say fruit and the nuts and all the rest of that. But I still use Indian rosewood and some of the other rosewoods when you're able to source them. Mm-hmm. I like timbers that have a bit of a figure on them, if I can find them.
Yeah.
because I don't really like a back stripe down the back of the guitar. I prefer it to be able to match two pieces of grain, so you've got a nice little V shape going on up the back of the instrument.
And how many instruments would you say you build a year?
Oh, on a good year, I probably make about 2 or 3. So it's a slow process because I don't do it full time.
And you've brought some instruments here with you.
Yes, indeed.
One of them is delightful. I've had a shot of the one with the dragonfly sound hole and the beautiful inlay on the neck.
Yeah.
That's stunning.
That's my own design, that one.
Uh-huh.
The dragonfly theme came about and I sort of did some design work, and originally I was going to put a whole line of dragonflies flying up the neck, but after I'd cut the first one I thought I think one is enough.
Yeah.
And because there's no sound hole in the front of the instrument in the conventional sense, the bracing's different. It's like an A brace with tone bars and a bridge plate. So it does mean that you've actually got a bit bigger expanse of spruce to vibrate. Because basically it's stiff to just below where the dragonfly sound holes in the 2 upper bouts are.
Yeah.
And then below, because it's double thickness material there to make sure that it doesn't collapse, because it's got some quite small bits of timber between the holes of the dragonfly.
And I didn't notice, is that a 12 fret or a 14 fret?
That's a 14 fret.
14.
Fret, that one, yes. Yeah, I completed another one for a customer for last July. It's for his 70th birthday.
Right.
And that turned out really well. I was quite sorry to let it go.
So what sort of styles of music do you enjoy playing?
I have quite an eclectic taste. Everything from sort of what you might call folk music in its broadest sense. I do go to folk clubs, but I very rarely sing anything that might be strictly called a folk song.
Well, it depends who you talk to, doesn't it? So there's some purists out there that, you know, if you don't play something that's classed as folk in inverted commas, then they can get a little bit.
Yes, I managed to perform a Mark Knopfler number with my playing colleague Sean some time ago at a very traditional folk club. And people were asking, was that song collected? And they didn't recognise the name Mark Knopfler at all.
You're kidding? No.
And you just go, because I think I'm right in saying that he has been on the bill at the Cambridge Folk Festival in recent years.
Okay, maybe he is folk then.
Well, that was his original background, apparently.
Yeah.
And you can hear it in his playing, actually.
I found out recently, actually, that he was born in Glasgow.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I thought he was a Geordie lad through and through, but I can claim some ownership now.
Yes.
So this gathering is an amazing gathering of luthiers, musicians, fans. What do you enjoy most about coming to this gathering?
I enjoy listening to the music. I really enjoy the plucky dips. When, you know,
And the plucky dips are where we pick names from a hat during dinner on the Friday, and we form impromptu duos and trios, and it can be quite nerve-wracking. I just got placed with Gordon Giltrap.
You lucky man.
Yes, I'm a little bit nervous, I have to say, but excited.
Yeah, so that's always enjoyable. And I think the other thing I particularly enjoy is the opportunity to chew the fat, so to speak, with other makers, because there's always aspects of instrument making. You know, it's a bit like how many people does it need to change a light bulb? You know, you can do different jobs in different ways, and we all have our own little quirks about how we do particular jobs, and sometimes somebody's way of doing it is an improvement on what you're doing. So, you know, it's always nice to talk about that, or about finishing, getting the lacquer on, what finish they're using, how they're putting it on, and things like that, because obviously instrument making for most of people who do it is a fairly solitary existence. Indeed. So to get together with fellow makers is a delight. Yeah.
So one of the things I've always found about luthiery is that everybody's willing to share. There's no proprietary, this is mine, I'm not telling you. It's very open and honest and sharing, and I love that about guitar making.
Yeah, I think that's been my experience with the vast majority of other luthiers I've spoken to. They can't be helpful enough. You know, they just want to assist. If you've got a question, they'll try and help you.
Yeah.
And, you know, it could be a case of, oh, does anybody know where we can get one of these, a particular item?
Yeah.
And somebody will send an email back saying, you know, you can get these from so-and-so.
Yeah.
And it's sort of weird things like drill bits, like a brad-pointed drill bits. You can get them quite easily in the big stores. But if you want a small one, like a size 2mm, can you find one? No.
Right.
It's only about one supplier in the UK. And that's the right size for doing the side dots on the side of the fingerboard.
Okay.
So, you know, and being brad pointed, it doesn't skip or move from the point where you've marked where you want to drill. So, you know, just having that makes life easier and less likely that you'll make a mistake and have to fill a hole and re-drill it.
Yeah.
So it's little things like that
it's
you know.
amazing. And a friend of ours, a mutual friend from these gatherings, Alan Marshall, he's recently hung up his tools, hasn't he, and started distributing some of his machinery and his wood stock.
Yes, he's been... he sent a call out for assistance from people he knew that weren't too far from him to come and help empty the workshop, which was about a couple of months ago.
I believe there were a lot of stairs involved.
Yes, there is a lot of stairs. And there was a couple of points on one of the stair journeys where he had his wood store upstairs where you had to watch your head very carefully. Mm-hmm. A couple of big beams in the way. But we emptied a lot of machinery, a lot of timber. Quite a lot of it, I think, went to Tony Thompson.
Tony, yeah.
Yeah.
Tony's not here this time, unfortunately.
No. It was Nathan who came up to get it.
Nathan Ball.
Yeah. And, you know, Alan very kindly gave me a few bits and pieces, a few fingerboard blanks and things like that, you know, small pieces, which are ideal, just useful.
Yeah, fantastic. And you told me that he had a guitar half-built, which you've acquired?
Yes, he gave me a half-built instrument.
Are you going to complete it?
Yeah, I'm not sure what logo I'll put it on. I don't know for sure, but I have a suspicion, because he's often had people come and work with him in the workshop for a bit to learn how to make an instrument. I suspect it's one of those that never got finished, because I think if it was one that he had been building himself, he would have completed it and finished it. So I've got the body's made, the sides are bent with the blocks in and the linings, and I've got the back with the braces on, so that needs gluing together now. And so then I'll make a front with the braces on, etc. So it'll be a hybrid. So we'll just see. I'll probably not put a logo on it.
A Northworthy Griffiths.
Northworthy Sheaf or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Sheaf guitars, that's your
right,
brand, isn't it? Yeah. And do you travel to any of the guitar shows? I know Berlin's just happened. Do you ever get to go and...
I've been to a few shows over the years, usually some in Leeds, some in Haydock Park, and a few other ones like that, just small shows. But I'm not sure they're the ideal places to show off handmade instruments, as they always tend to be a bit noisy and a bit overpowering. And
it's really more of a networking PR thing, isn't it? Yeah.
I think over the years, I've just about broken even from doing them through selling a couple of smaller instruments like mandolins, things like that. Okay.
Have you ever managed to get to the Acoustic soundboard gathering in Halifax?
No, I haven't, and that's something I'd like to try and develop, because Halifax isn't too far from me.
Yeah, Sheffield you come from.
Yeah, it's not sort of eons away, is it?
No, I've never been myself, but I'm hoping to go in September this year. And I know some of the guys just from having been on the Acoustic Soundboard Forum. And Ian, who's here this weekend, he's been to Halifax a couple of times and recommends it. So.
Oh, good. Does Adrian Lucas get involved? Is he involved with that?
Yeah, Adrian's been as well.
Yeah. Because I know Adrian quite well. So.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to the company of Adrian later on today.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's it. I just enjoy the process of making, whether it's for a commission or whether it's just as an experimental instrument or something to extend my collection, because I haven't got one of those to play.
Right. And did you play first or did you build first?
I played first. I've played since I was about 14. And I've misspent youth at university learning to play, as I think I spent more time playing guitar at university than I did working.
Yeah, I think I did too.
So,
so what have you got on the drawing board for what's next on your plans?
At the moment, I'm completing a mandolin for a customer, and his name's John West, and he's always had, how shall I put it, the Michael taken out of him about his name, about fish. Because John West, salmon, tuna, whatever, when he was young. So he asked me to put a leaping salmon on the fingerboard. Wow. So we now have a leaping salmon on the mandolin fingerboard.
Fantastic.
So that's nearly finished. That's ready for lacquer. Mm-hmm. So now the weather appears to have warmed up a bit, I should be setting up the spray equipment so I can...
And you still work from your shed in the garden?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So... we have many sheds in our garden. 3 sheds and a greenhouse. Yeah. So one is a studio that my wife uses for her textile work. One's a garden shed for the usual garden shed items, and one's my workshop. Okay,
so it's a workshop, man cave, escape.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I use it sometimes to go and just sit and play or sit and read or listen to the radio if I need a bit of downtime.
And do you dry your wood in the shed?
The timber is all kept in the workshop, and the workshop is kept at a fairly even humidity. There's a dehumidifier in there, and I keep the humidity pretty constant in there, because it's not so much temperature as humidity that's the issue. Yeah. And it's good if the timber can sit in your workshop for at least 6 months to a year before you actually use it. Yeah. Then it's unlikely to move a lot when you start to machine it and bend it and work with it, because the humidity, it'll be used to the humidity in there, so it won't be put under great stress during the building process. Usually try to keep the workshop between 45 and 55 relative humidity, which is quite dry. Yeah.
We actually had relative humidity down to about 45 in my house on the Isle of Arran.
Yeah.
It's very unusual to have it as low as that in the house.
Yes, it is, because it's usually up in the 60s. It's usually the sort of average in a house.
I can actually tell when I pick my guitar off the wall and play it. I can usually roughly tell from the tone before I look at my hygrometer sort of what the humidity is going to be.
Yeah, that's why they have a lot of problems in places like the States with the humidity on guitars. It's because they'll have them out all winter and they'll be playing them, and then in the spring it starts to warm up and they turn on the air conditioning, so suddenly the humidity plummets.
Yeah, and that's when cracks can appear.
Yeah, that's when you get issues.
Yeah, and conversely, when you have humidity that's really high, you can start to get a bit of bellying round the bridge. But
it's not usually quite such an issue about doing that a bit as the other way.
You can dry it out again and it'll usually go back down, hopefully. Yeah. And you do any repair work?
Yeah, I do quite a lot of repair work. As you might expect, the repair work is financially more rewarding than making an instrument for somebody. The reality price of a handmade instrument should be about $4,000. Because if you spend 200 hours making it, and you've got the cost of materials, you're not earning a lot of money.
No.
So most of mine don't sell. Usually about $2,500 is that sort of an up a bit, depending if they've had a nice pickup in it or something. So, I make a few quid on it, but it's not like a huge amount of money, whereas you can do repairs for people and they're quite happy to pay what you would consider a decent hourly rate for a repair, whereas they wouldn't pay that rate for a full build. So I've got 1970s Yamaha on the workbench at the moment, which has had a hard life. I've had to repair a hole in the side where there was a jack socket, fill in excess holes on the headstock where the tuners have been changed, but the holes were still visible from the previous tuners. Needs a new nut. and it's got a slight lift on the bridge, which has been glued back down, and the bridge plate inside has got a crack in it, so the piece has been removed. It's about to be re-glued back in,
right,
with a couple of veneers over the top to give it a bit of extra integrity. And then it should be going back to the owner once the pickup's fitted for it.
Yeah. And I suppose you'll learn a few things from looking at different instruments on the repair bench.
It's quite interesting to look inside an instrument, get the mirrors out and put it in through the sound. I'll open it up, put a light in and have a good look and see what different makers do. It's quite surprising sometimes. Yeah. You think, oh, that's interesting, I know, for example, some makers don't notch the bridge plate into the X-brace. So they actually deliberately put them up against them so they're nearly touching, but they put a bevel on the edge of the bridge plate, and that gives the hot top a bit more flexibility because it's not actually...
Oh, I see.
So, but they will have compensated for doing that by making sure something else is strong enough so the thing doesn't collapse.
Yeah.
It's a little game of taking a bit off here and adding a bit there or whatever. And sometimes you think, well, doing that makes life easy. You haven't got to cut the notches out in the X-brace and get it all to fix. So it's easier to do. So you think, oh, well, where did that come from? Did it come as a reason for making the top respond better, or did it come from the fact that actually this is easier and quicker to do?
Yeah.
You do wonder that. Have you seen the new bracing that Taylor's developed?
The V bracing?
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of discussion about it. A few sceptics out there and a few evangelists, shall we say.
It does sound interesting. Yeah. I've played a couple of them, but my immediate response, having seen it in the flesh, was, oh, how nicely designed that is to be all CNC cut and mass produced. If you see what I mean, it was. You looked at it and said, the design might work brilliantly, that's great, but you actually look at it and go, there's a lot less pieces of timber on there than a conventional X-brace, and the way they are means that, yes, you can just cut them and glue them on and sort them, and you think, yes.
I suppose time will tell. It's such a new technique.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've listened to Andy Powers being interviewed, so I've heard the ins and outs, the pros. According to Andy Powers, there aren't any cons, but we'll see. We'll see. I think the jury's still out on that.
I think that's interesting because I think, to me, the most interesting point about it is the bracing's more or less longitudinal, although it's got a V shape, and that's why it's got its name. But the longitudinal bracing changes the way the top responds. And if you look at old arch top guitars, jazz guitars, that sort of thing, they invariably have a longitudinal brace, the early ones.
Ah, okay.
So it's, two braces either side of the middle. Just
inside
the
arch top would give it more strength.
The arch is shaped, obviously, but then there's two braces down they often call them the tone bars. So. And you think, that's perhaps why they can say they can hear a bit of that sort of sound in the instrument.
Okay. Yeah.
And it did make me think that, it might be worth investigating something like that. I usually, when I make a mandolin, it's usually like an H-shaped bracing, ladder bracing.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, well, maybe with a mandolin, because a lot of people like mandolins with a woody sound, like a carved top. Mandolin produces a different tone to a flat top mandolin. Whether you could get towards that carved top mandolin by using a more longitudinal braced system, because that's what would be in the carved top instrument. You would have that type of bracing rather than X bracing or cross bracing. So you just think, perhaps we can move it a bit in that direction by doing that.
Well, just when you think there's nothing new under the sun, along comes another innovation in luthiery. Yeah,
so I think, Taylor have been a real inspiration because they have innovated consistently.
Yeah.
And I think that helps keep not just the rest of the mass-produced instrument market on its toes, but I think it makes luthiers think about, how do we do things, because they're...
Yeah. One of the great things I've learned about Taylor guitars is their sustainability projects, which they're running.
Yeah.
And they're really looking forward long term into the ecology of the globe, because wood is, as we know, it's a finite source. It's going to run out at some point if we don't take care of it now. So I think that's...
Sourcing timber's become quite a lot more difficult. I do try where I can to use salvaged materials. I've got some really nice Victorian mahogany that came off a table top.
Okay.
The table was scrap, so I wouldn't want to cut up a piece of antique furniture.
Yeah.
But it had been left outside, so that didn't do it any good.
Okay. Yeah.
And it had new legs put on it at some time in its life, which were not in the style of the original by any shape or form, which the legs will actually make some really nice neck blanks.
What I was listening to a podcast about the sustainability of wood and forestry, and one of the things that blew my mind was how little of an impact guitar makers and instrument makers in general actually have. It seems that most of the wood tends to go to China, and it goes in boats and furniture. And
it's the furniture making industry that's the biggest user, and unfortunately the restrictions that are being put on everybody about timber has had an effect disproportionately on instrument makers, whereas we don't use a lot of timber in terms of volume. And I saw something in the paper the other day, and it was something to do with timber exports to China. And the country said it had sent this many metric tons, but the Chinese, in their documentation, said they'd received about 5 times as much. And you think, I wonder where that's come from, because they probably have received it. It's probably come through a back door somewhere, and they've sort of linked it to the other bit, which was covered by all the paperwork. So there's a lot of stuff going on that perhaps shouldn't be.
Yeah, well, it's now that I think people are becoming more aware of it, so it's good in a sense. But of course, the guitar maker who's got a stock of Brazilian rosewood with no paperwork, they're not going to be able to sell it, are they, or export it? Or...
They're not going to be able to export it.
Yeah.
I have a set of Brazilian and an old table that I was given by somebody that was made probably about 60 years ago or more by somebody's dad who worked in a woodyard, and he obviously had collected this, but he's taken them and made a rustic little coffee table out of them. And this lady said, old lady said, "Oh, do you want this? It's been wrapped up in the loft for years." I didn't know what timber it was, so I thought I'll take it home and see what it is. Got it home and thought, this looks like Brazilian rosewood. It sounds like Brazilian rosewood because it's very metallic when you tap it together. When you cut it, it has that rosewood smell. So it's it is a rosewood, but I wouldn't, without having any DNA testing or whatever, be sure that it's Brazilian. But of course, there's no certification for that.
No.
But you can use it in a guitar, and you can sell it within the UK, and it can be traded within the UK. As long as it doesn't cross borders, that's not a problem, because there's no point in saying, we can't use this stuff anymore, because it's totally usable timber. So you think, well, right, then we'll use it, and then if somebody... As long as you explain to somebody if they want that timber on an instrument, that you won't be able to take it out of the UK, it's going to have to stay, otherwise it'll... Because I know there are issues with rosewood being moved between countries, and different border agencies or customs agencies or whoever it is in a country apply what are the same regulations in very different ways.
Yeah.
I think you're allowed, the regulation says you're allowed like so many grams of like Brazilian rosewood in an instrument. So there might be the head plate or the bridge or something like that. Not a huge amount of wood, but if it's got that on it, but it's less than this amount, it should be okay. But no, what happens? It gets confiscated.
Yeah.
And you do ask the question, how do the people impounding it know that it's Brazilian rosewood? Because rosewoods quite obviously can be seen to be a rosewood, but which one it is,
well, I think
can
now
be
they're
quite
just having
difficult.
a blanket coverage for all rosewoods, just because they can't discern one from the other.
So, but
and the same applies to abalone, doesn't it, or any kind of shell product?
Have they started? I've not had any problems.
It's part
with
of the site's convention on endangered species. Yeah. So if you're moving any kind of animal-based product at all, plant or animal, then you have to have paperwork and proof of provenance.
Yeah. And how do you prove it? Because it's quite difficult to prove where something's come from.
Absolutely.
I've bought shell from Australia. Pre-cut dots and triangles and things. And I must confess, when I'm cutting out designs, I do tend to try and use what they call ablam, which is laminated pieces of abalone that are laminated together with epoxy to form a sheet. Which is not necessarily always quite as attractive as the pure shell.
A bit easier to cut.
It's a bit easier to cut, and it's because it's a lot less expensive. Because they're effectively using the offcuts from industries that are making other things with the shell. So it's like using a waste product almost, which I feel that's somewhat more ethical than using the shell. So
it's fascinating. Well, Malcolm, thank you very much for sitting down with me this morning. If any of our listeners want to look you up, do you have a website or a Facebook presence that they can look
I
at?
have a Facebook page. So if you look for Sheaf, that's SHEAF, guitars, you should find what I'm doing as I post most of the builds and the repairs on the Facebook page.
Great.
And then if you want to get hold of me, you can message me via that.
And if you're a player or a musician, you can always come to the RMMGA gatherings, generally around March. This one's a little later in May. But they're annual, so you can come and find Malcolm there and have a chat with him. Maybe even commission a build, who knows. Thank you, Malcolm. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you, and I'll see you all later. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Many thanks to Malcolm once again for sitting down with me and having a chat. I hope you enjoyed that interview. If you did, please let me know. Or if you have any other suggestions for the show, perhaps a potential player or luthier who you think would be a good person to have on the show, I would love to hear from you. It's a fledgling podcast, so I'm looking for all the love I can get. You can catch me on CAMS, that's CAMS, at acousticguitar.io. So you can email me there, or you can find me on the Steam blockchain, where I'll be publishing a lot of this content. You'll find me there on steemit.com. That's STEEMIT, steemit.com/@acousticguitar. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode. Thanks for listening.